the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Tackle, it's a top 5 player in the class.
Absolutely. Who is Tennessee most in on this cycle that national folks and maybe fans are overlooking? Who's in because we hear other you covering this program, you're like, hey, I know this program's sitting in the weeds for this guy, and it's not really. Who is the Tennessee version of that? Who is someone else writing on the other team's message boards of Tennessee's just lying in the weeds on this player that a lot of folks are overlooking, the Vols, or not giving the Vols enough credit for really having a real shot here?
That's a good question. I think there are a few that could fit that description. I think for a while it might have been Juan Gaston, the 4-star offensive tackle, teammate of Travis Smith. I think both of those guys, in some ways, Tennessee's chances have been underplayed by some media. I think especially with Travis Smith, Tennessee's right in the thick of that one with Georgia, and I think a lot of people have kind of pegged him for Georgia. And I think Georgia has felt really good about his chances of landing Travis Smith, and probably should as the home state school. But I think Tennessee's got a real shot in that one going into his official visit next weekend. Juan Gaston, though, is one where if you want to say laying in the weeds, I think some people think they're not even one of the top 2 or 3, and I think that's maybe underselling Tennessee's chances. He very well might end up at Georgia, and if I had to guess right now, they probably are the odds-on favorite, but he's talking about waiting till the fall to make a decision. I just don't know that that's the laydown that some people think it is, that he's just automatically going to Georgia. And if that's the case, Tennessee is one of the teams best positioned to have a chance to pull the upset. So that's one I'm watching this weekend. It's not a decision that's likely to come soon, but if Tennessee comes out of the weekend feeling pretty good about its chances of Juan Gaston, I think that's one that some people have maybe underplayed a little bit. So, but again, there are some other candidates that probably fit that description too. Those are just a couple that come to mind, and Gaston in particular going into this weekend, one that I've thought about here recently. But honestly, for a while, it was David Sanders. I think some people thought Clemson, Ohio State had some buzz at one point, Georgia. I think for a while people were sleeping on Tennessee, and then it became apparent, I think, with the back-to-back visits in early April that, hey, Tennessee's really in this. And even now, I think some people maybe misrepresent the situation, thinking it's, hey, it's Ohio State, it's Georgia, Clemson's still in there. I think Tennessee is quite possibly the team to beat for David Sanders. And I don't think some people fully realize that they're in that good a position with him going into this weekend.
Are we going to get a crystal ball here soon, Ryan Callahan?
I don't know about this soon. We'll see, but I think that's at least something that could be on the horizon for this month. We'll see how the next couple weekends play out. I'm going to still watch that Ohio State visit next weekend probably before we do anything. But again, if you're Tennessee, I think you want to come out of this weekend feeling like you're definitely in the best position with David Sanders. So I think there's already been a good bit of optimism about him.
Well, you mentioned Travis Smith, and Tennessee obviously went into going into Georgia and pulling players Georgia covets is always going to be difficult. That's part of the big boy battles that I think Tennessee fans sometimes struggle with, is that look, it's just hard. Georgia's in a very talent rich state. I think either majority of most Tennessee classes are going to be Georgia kids. That's kind of where you want to be in terms of building this thing out and catching Georgia atop the conference. You kind of really need to have a strong footprint in the state of Georgia, and you go in and get Mike Matthews, my alma mater, Parkview last year. It can be done, and that was a big win for Tennessee. Travis Smith. What makes it interesting too is that Georgia, I don't know how many receivers they take in their class, and they're loading up quietly. And it's Travis Smith is right there. Tennessee wants one more. You got Radarious Jackson in there. You've got Joakim Dodson in there. You have an option with how do you pronounce Miller's first name in Missouri?
He everybody calls him DJ, but I believe it's the Jerry in his first name. So yeah, DJ is what everyone calls him.
DeJarry Miller. When is he in? Is he in this weekend or next weekend?
He's in this weekend. That's a really interesting visit too, because I don't think you can turn him away if you're Tennessee. You want Travis Smith, but that's a good enough player. I think a lot of people are maybe undervaluing him right now, at least Tennessee fans. I don't hear a lot of talk about him. I think that's a good player. If Tennessee ended up missing out on Travis Smith and getting DJ Miller, I don't think that's a travesty. I think DJ Miller's a good player.
And it's also just I guess because of the Missouri factor, I think you're always just kind of are you sure he's going to leave the state? Because of NIL stuff in Missouri, he's a St. Louis kid. Is that real?
Not taking an official visit to Missouri as of right now. It looks like an SEC battle for him. I think Ole Miss is probably Tennessee's main competition going into this weekend. He's also going to visit Kentucky next weekend. Illinois was supposed to be on his official visit. I itinerary. I don't know if he made it there for sure or not, but I haven't heard a lot of buzz about Illinois being one of the main contenders. So I think it's a Tennessee Ole Miss battle at the moment, and that's a really interesting visit. He was in this spring and really liked that visit as well. So he's a bigger guy. Tennessee's kind of compared him to at least to talking with him. They've compared him to Cedric Tillman a little bit. He's like 6'3", 195. Runs pretty well though. For a guy that size, I think he's a really good player that a lot of people are kind of sleeping on. So
is he done growing, or do you think he gets a little bit taller?
You never know for sure on that. I don't get the sense that he's likely to get taller, but with a frame like that, could he be 215 down the road, or is he going to stay closer to 200 pounds? That's always the interesting question with those bigger framed receivers. But and yet Travis Smith, for that matter, is a 190 pound guy with a good frame that could easily be that 200 plus pound guy too. So they've got a couple kind of bigger framed receivers that they're still in on for that potentially last spot in this class. But I'm kind of watching that DJ Miller visit this weekend, because that's a really interesting one to me, where if he wanted in, I think Tennessee ideally wants to see what happens with Travis Smith before it adds anybody else. But that's a good player that I think Tennessee would be hard pressed to turn away if that opportunity presented itself.
Your favorite commit in this class right now for Tennessee is who?
Oh man. I would probably go with, I feel like I'm going to forget somebody here if I just rattle off someone off the top of my head. I'd probably go with Radarious Jackson. I think a lot of people, based on his current rating, don't fully appreciate the upside and potential there that Radarious Jackson has. And if you haven't watched his film, it's a lot of fun to watch. He just nothing but big plays all the time. He can go up and get it in the end zone. He can make it.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.